Let us, Julio, are you ready? I've lost you on this. Ah, there we are. Yeah, there's so many people tonight. You're just a very small square, sir. You've diminished in size.
Anyway, this works.
Okay, we're going live. Is everyone else muted? Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys and assembled company, welcome to the World Storytelling Cafe. And tonight is a very special night. Friday's night is always children's night, but tonight we have on a group of young storytellers, and we are working in collaboration with Get a Word in Edgeways. Mike, would you like to wave at us from Get a Word in Edgeways? Where have you gone? That's okay. Mike seems to have disappeared. There he is up in the corner. And yes. And Paul Jackson from the Society of Storytellers. Storytelling. I've only been a member for 300 years. Why would I get it right? Now, as you can see, we are very white, very grey, and very wrinkled. So we are not the young storytellers. However, we do have a plethora of young storytellers and poets coming up, which keeps the tradition alive. So when we actually lay down our words and decide we just want to become listeners, we know everything is safe in this generation's hands. So I shall let Mike Rust from Get a Word in Edgeways introduce our first two tellers. Mike, would you like to say something about it? No, yes. No, actually, I'm entirely wrong. I had it all written down. I hate to confuse you, Mike. I told you it was National Dyslexic Day. Right. I did all that build up. So I'm just going to get that energy back. Merrick, darling, could you please introduce the first two wonderful tellers?
Thank you, John. Yeah, I would love to introduce Christine and Harmondeep, who are two students who run their own storytelling club in a school in East London. And they are going to tell you two folk tales, but not only are they going to tell you two folk tales from their country of origin, they're going to also include their language, which is Christine, who's from Romania, and Harmondeep, who's from India. She will be sharing in Punjabi. So I'd like to hand you over. If Christine, you could now unmute, please, and take us into the first magical story. Thank you.
A fost odată, ca și niciodată, fiindcă dacă n-ar fi fost, eu nu și-ar fi aici. In a far, far away land, there lived the king with his 3 daughters. And he was just curious, wanting to know how much did they love him, for not only for being their father, but also for being the king. So he asked his oldest daughter, "Fiica mea cea mai mare, cât de mult tu mă iubești?" Father, there are no words for how much I love you. But if I must, I love you just like honey. Honey because it's sweet, but also because you need it. Very well said, my daughter. I have taught you well. He moved on to his middle daughter and asked her, "Fiica mea cea mijlocie, cât de mult tu mă iubești?" Father, just as my oldest sister has said, I love you I love you just like sugar. Sugar, because you need it and it's so sweet, but also because your whole kingdom is based around you. And you are just like sugar. And again, he said, you surprised me. I have taught you well. He moved on to his youngest daughter and asked her, Fica minha chama amiga, câte mult tu mă iubești? And she said, Father, Your Highness, Your Majesty, my King, just as my two oldest sisters have said, I love you. The words do not exist. I have so much respect and loyalty towards you. But I do love you, just like salt. Ah, yes. What, excuse me? Excuse me. You, how dare you say that you love me? Me, your father, just like salt? I cannot even bear to look at you. Just go. I cannot bear to look at you. You disrespected me. And with that said, she faced down, tears coming down of her eyes, and moved. She left the room and packed a small little bag with a blanket and a photo of her family. She left the castle, never looking back. Days, weeks, months, years had passed. She still felt broken and betrayed, but she couldn't really do anything. She stumbled upon a castle, a big castle. It looked so beautiful, structured. Right in the corner of her eye, she could see a gate made out of wood, dark, dull. That's exactly how she felt. With her head bowing down, she was hesitant. Should she knock on the door? Should she not? Is this respectful? Is this not? But she built up the courage, took a deep breath in, still looking down, knocked on the door, and an old lady opened the door and asked her, Are you okay? Is something wrong? Well, you do realize you're in a castle? How can I help you? Are you lost? She opened her mouth, but she couldn't say anything. The old lady found mercy upon her and told her that she could come inside only if she agrees to become a cleaner. She agreed. Day and night, day after day, she started cleaning every single small little crevice, but she was still cleaning, making sure no dust is left. She was still cleaning and cleaning and cleaning. Days, weeks, months passed by, and she was cleaning the kitchen. I don't know what happened, but she just felt like she needed to taste the food, the soup. So she did. But as she tasted it, there was something missing. But she just didn't know what. Maybe she needed to add something else, but she just didn't know what she needed to add. But she remembered. And she figured it out. She asked the chef, Can I please just add something, if you don't mind, if it's okay with you? The chef said, Yeah, sure. She took a pinch of salt, sprinkled it on top of the soup, and that made the soup perfect. Exactly the perfect amount of salt. She took the soup, took it to the king and the queen. King and the queen, they were shocked. It was so good. It was too good. Jabun. Brabun. So good, so good. It's mouth-watering. The queen asked, "Who did this? Who did this dish? It's so good, so much flavor. I've never tasted anything like this." A few days, weeks, months passed by, and, well, their son fell ill. Very ill. The princess, the girl, she came in, cleaned, was a bit talking to him, making sure that he just felt a little bit better. They soon had a lot in common. They soon became friends, but then they soon grew to love each other more. And after the prince got better, he asked the girl her hand in marriage. She was so happy and delighted. Her cheeks were rosy pink. She said yes. She was too happy. A few days, weeks, months passed, and their wedding day came up. She asked the chef if she could cook the food. Not him. He could take a day off. It's her wedding day after all. She made the food, but she made it special. As they were sitting down and the food was given to everyone, she still felt that she needed to invite her parents, her dad, and her two sisters, as they were still part of her. They were part of her. She loved them too much. She felt that she had this kind heart and she wanted to forgive them. Even though it hurt her so much, she still wanted to forgive them. As I was sitting down, the king looked around, left, right, left. Everyone was eating the food, just stuffing it inside of their mouths. And they were just saying how good it was. It was too delicious. It was mouth-watering. Whilst his food was... Let's just not say anything about the food. And he was looking around and tasting a little bit of his food and saying, no. Ugh. Didn't like the food. Everyone else was eating so much of it and he didn't quite like it. So he asked one of his neighbors if on the table if he could try a bit of their food. Just to make sure that it was good, or it was just him. Tried it. So good. Too good, in fact. But his food, again, was disgusting. He stood up as it was discrimination against him and his two daughters, as only them had such disgusting and horrendous food. Was everyone else had delicious food? How come they didn't have it? And the queen, as it was her castle, she asked the chef, and as she thought that he made the food, she said, "How dare you disrespect my fellow king and his two daughters? How dare you? Do you realize what the punishment is? You shall be decapitated, as it is the only rightful thing to do for your treason." The bride, the princess, stood up. She said if he didn't do it. He didn't do the food, I did. So I should be the one who should be decapitated, not him. The king realized that it was her, that it was his daughter at the table. But before he could say anything, she stopped him and said, "Now you see, Dad, everyone else's, they have salt. I added salt to theirs. But whilst for you, I have only added honey and sugar. You did say that you appreciated them more by saying honey and sugar, whilst I got banished just because I said salt. Now you see, the small little salt makes everything better. And with that said, the father realized what a mistake he has made and asked for her forgiveness. And she forgave him. And with that being said, they lived happily ever after. Și așa v-am zis povestea mea. Thank you.
Brilliant, Christine.
I loved it, Christine. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Well done, fantastic. And now, Harmondeep, if you could unmute, please, and could you share your tale? Thank you.
The boy just stood there. He just stood there wondering what was going on. All the villagers were just standing there in front of him, silent, whispering amongst themselves. You tell him. No, you tell him. No, I told him the bad news last time. It's not fair. It's your turn now. You tell him. Until the oldest one stepped up and said, Young boy, your father has been eaten by a man-eating tiger. The boy was shocked. I mean, shocked was an understatement. He was paralyzed. His loved one, his father. They weren't just father and son, they were best friends. Gone forever. Then the boy knew what he wanted. And that was revenge. He wanted revenge from that beast. He spent 3 days on his plan. The first day, he set out into the jungle and dug a pit. He dug and he dug and he was tired, but he didn't care about how tired he was. He just kept on going. Thinking about his father made him more and more angry. I mean, I can't even dig a hole in the garden, let alone digging a pit. So, after he finished digging for the whole day, he grabbed the long sticks and covered the pit. Then he grabbed the small ones and covered the pit, making it look natural. And he grabbed a whole load of leaves and sprinkled it everywhere. And the second day, he spent on making a spear. That weapon was going to do the job. It was gonna stab the tiger in the chest. And he makes a spear. He wraps it around with kelp. Each time he pulled it, the anger consumed him more and more as he was thinking about his father, his best friend. And then, the third day, it was the day of revenge. He set out into the jungle and tracked down the tiger. And there it was. There was the roar, the ear-piercing roar of the tiger. He tracked it down, and then finally, they were head to head. And the boy quickly ran. He ran as fast as he could. He ran past all those tall trees, that beautiful jungle, and he just kept on running because he couldn't handle the fact that his loved one was taken away from him. He missed all that beauty because beauty wasn't what was important right now. There was flames in his eyes, flames of revenge. And he ran as fast as he could until he came closer and closer to the pit. He jumped, and the tiger didn't know. She just fell in. And that boy was happy. In fact, he was just full of excitement and anger. That's it. He raised his spear. He was gonna kill it. He said, I'm gonna kill it. That's it. I'm gonna kill it. He raises it higher and higher to throw it. And then he hears mewing of cubs. They're just looking down at their mother, not knowing what was going on. And the boy, he put his spear down. He said, I can't put the cubs in the pain he was going through. They were just scrawny little cubs that needed protection. After all, cubs are children as well, just like us. And then he threw something inside the pit so that the tiger could climb out. And then she went off running to her children. The boy ran off. The tiger knew she was forgiven. And then the boy could see it. He could see the beauty of the forest. वाह, अब पेड़ किन्ने लंबे आ नाले मैं इत्थे पहला क्यों नहीं आया क्योंकि यह किन्ना सोहना जंगल है. And now he went back to his mother. He just wanted to go home. There was still sorrow in his heart. That pain was still alive. But he was guilt-free. And now he just wanted to go home. Thank you.
You did it, Harmandeep.
Well done, you two. Fantastic.
Wonderful, wonderful,
Thank you.
wonderful.
I
Now,
loved it.
oh, well, we might as well just all retire, mightn't we? I don't know about you, Mike, but I think I'm just giving up. There's, you're both wonderful. Now, when I go to Romania, I usually visit a school, and over these, I've told loads of stories there, and gradually people come out and the pupils come and translate the stories for me, because despite the fact that I've been trying for 5 years to learn Romanian, I've failed miserably because I have a head like concrete. And so it is with great pleasure. She's probably not in that school anymore. Are you in the intermediate school now, Laura? Laura, unmute yourself.
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm still in the same school. I have one more year in here, and then I'll go to another school. But I have just one more year in here. I'm in 8th grade.
excellent, excellent. Oh, I'm really, I haven't been there since February because of lockdown, and I'm really missing your school and your village and everything else. So thank you very much for bringing some of the village to us, Laura. Laura, would you like to tell us a story? Big round of applause.
Yes. I just want to tell you, even my school misses you so much. My school is just waiting for you to come back. And today I have a really old story made by Jon Kranga. It's a really old story, and it's called The Bear Who Got Played by a Fox. I mean, the fox was just like such a random, bad person. No, animal. So, a long time ago, there was just a super smart fox. She looked an entire night for food, but she couldn't find anything. And after the sun raised, she just stood in a bush and waited and waited and tried to fall asleep because her hunger was so powerful. But she just couldn't fall asleep. Her stomach was hurting very bad because she was really, really hungry. So while she was sitting there, she felt a really powerful smell of fish. She really loved fish. I mean, you love everything when you're hungry. And she just got her head out of that bush, and looked around, and she saw a really, really, really big cart full of fish. She just was so intelligent that she laid on the road and played dead. Like she played she was dead, just so that person who controlled the cart think she was dead so she could put her in the cart. So as the cart passed, he saw that beautiful giant fox. And the first thing in that time he thought about was to get the fox, get her fur, and make a beautiful giant coat for his wife. That was his number one plan, to make a beautiful coat for his wife. So he got the fox, put it in his cart, and went away. The cart was attached to some horses, like you all know. And as the man just was really busy looking at the road, be careful, she opened her eyes and saw herself full of fish everywhere. She was bathing in fish. And the first thing she did, she got in some fish in her hand and just threw it out of the cart on the road. And then she began to throw more with her legs, like she was pushing the fish down from the cart just so she can get it. And then when she was sure she had enough, she quickly snuggled out of the cart and went down. She managed to get all the fish, like all the fish in one entire pile, and get it to her home. She started eating, shoveling it in her mouth. She was like a festin. She was enjoying it so much. She didn't even care about the fish bones. She was eating them. And then a huge bear came. That bear was kind of soft, was not that aggressive. And she asked her really politely, "Miss, can I have some fish? I'm really hungry. I haven't eaten in days. I'm really, really hungry. Even one fish would do." She does not love sharing. She didn't love sharing. So the first thing she did, she said, "Well, I work for this fish. You should too." Like, she was so rude with him, even if he asked him just for one fish. "I work for this fish. You gotta get your own fish, man." He stood silently in there. So that fox was really smart and tricky. So made a plan. She said, "Wait, I'm gonna be a good person. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna teach you my way that I catch all this fish you saw in here." He was quickly interested. The fox take him to a beautiful lake and said, "Look, I put my tail in this water. You know, you gotta put your tail in the water. Just swing your tail in the water. And then so much fish will catch on it that you won't ever believe. It's so fast." The bear was really interested because who wouldn't like that? So the bear put his giant tail in the water. As he waited and waited and waited, the night came. It was really dark outside and really cold. Just as soon, he didn't even realize he fell asleep with his tail in the water. He didn't even realize. In the next morning, when he wake up, he realized all the water from the lake froze. and his tail was stuck in the water. He couldn't even do a thing. He couldn't move. His tail was stuck in the water. He tried to drag it, but he couldn't. And he called so loud, he yelled after the fox, "Miss Fox, can you please come and help me?" The fox came, grabbed his giant paws, and dragged him. You know what snapped? His tail. His tail remained in the water. He couldn't even do a thing. He was left with this much of a tail. The rest of his tail remained in the water. And just for curiosity, he looked in the water to see if some fish caught on his tail, because he wasted his tail for nothing then. He looked, not even one single fish caught on his tail. And then he asked the fox, "What did it do? What? It didn't happen. Nothing did happen. Where's my fish? I need fish. I'm hungry." And she said, "Well, you shouldn't believe me that much. You know foxes are really tricky, you know?" He said, "So I did this for nothing. I wasted a tail for nothing. You're telling me my tail is there for nothing?" He quickly grabbed the fox and put it in the water, on the water. As the water was froze, the fox just went so smoothly, like she was on some roller skates, but on her stomach. And as we know, the river was endless. It would never end. It would go around the world, as the story said. And the fox just roller skate with her tummy all over that frozen lake until the lake just like melted. The ice on the lake melted as she got down to realize her tail was missing too. Thank you. This is my story.
Thank you,
Și
Laura.
eu știu povestea.
Oh, beautiful.
Și eu știu
Now,
povestea și mi-a fost foarte frică pentru că nu se auzea destul de bine, dar am știut
Ui,
povestea și am fost
ok.
atât de încântată
ok.
să o aud.
E ok, trebuia doar ca
Mi-a
să
fost
zici ceva și în română.
pierd. Ai spus-o foarte fain. Mi-a plăcut foarte mult.
Mulțumesc, a fost și ție.
ah, I love that. That was just a perfect end, a little conversation between you two. That was fantastic. Right. As okay. Now, at the beginning, I said Mike was going to introduce his two. Of course, I got that totally wrong. It should have been Merrick. But, Mike, it is the moment for your two fine young people right now. So, Mike, if you could introduce them one at a time, that would be fantastic.
Well, thank you, John. So as we sit here in the United Kingdom, we have two for you. Firstly, the Welsh have sent one of their very best, John. They've sent Fionn, who's their young storyteller of the year. And she's done that a couple of 3 years now or so. She's been really, really good for them over there. But Wales are one of these countries, John, where they gather in the northern parts there and they speak their own language. They talk about their poet laureate and they talk about their harpists and their choirs. And they also nowadays just mention quietly that they have a young, beautiful storyteller. Fatma, well, she only a week or so ago, she was probably wondering what the hell she was going to do if they made her the young poet laureate of Birmingham. And you know what they did? They went and did it. Now, for her, her poetry is all about thoughts and feelings. And she must be sitting there wondering what change it's made in her life, where 2 weeks ago, she was just an ordinary poet. And now she's the greatest poet Birmingham got, representing Birmingham, her city, and England itself. So we'll go with Fionn first. You have to unmute yourself, mate. That's it.
Right now. So today I'm going to share with you, we've had some animal stories already. I'm going to share with you a story about the oldest animals in the world. Amser maith yn ôl, once upon a time, the eagle of Gwernabwy, Eryr Gwernabwy, sat on a branch, alone. His chicks had fledged many summers ago, and all that was left of his wife was the echo of her cry in the autumn leaves. Roedd o wedi laru ar ei cwmpeni ei hun. He was sick of his own company. He needed somebody else to hold, to share his stories with. He needed to find a new wife, but who? Pwy? He was old. He didn't want to marry a young bird because, well, she would just tire him out and he would bore her to tears. And he thought for a while as he ruffled his feathers. And then he remembered. There was one girl, one woman. Dyllian Cwm Cawlyd, the owl of Cwm Cawlyd. She was old, but when he thought about it, he wasn't quite sure if she was older than he was, and it was very rude to ask a woman her age. So he decided he'd better go and ask a friend. And he swooped down from his branch, and off he flew to the oak woods of Rhedynfre. And there, standing proud in a glade atop a fallen tree stump, was a great stag with mighty antlers, the stag of Rhedynfre. He went down and landed next to him, and he called out, "Stag, Carw, wyt ti'n gwybod os yw Dyllian Cwm Cawlyd yn old? Hen, do you know if the owl of Cwm Cawlyd is old?" Gyfaill, friend, I am old. You see this tree stump here? I remember when it was but a tiny acorn. I watched it fall from the top of a tree, grow for 300 years, stand for 300, and rot for another 300. I am old, and the owl of Cwm Cawlyd was old when I first met her. But I do have a friend who is older than I am. She is the salmon of Llynllifon. Diolch, Carw, thank you, stag. And on the eagle flew, over to the lake in the green rolling hills. And there, swimming underneath the shimmering surface, the salmon of Llynllifon glittered in the cold water. Eog, salmon, do you know if the owl of Cwm Cawlyd is old? Gyfaill, friend, I am old. I have swam for as many years as there are scales on my huge body and eggs in my belly. And the owl of Cwm Cawlyd was old when I first met her. But I do have a friend who is older than me. He might know. He is the Blackbird of Kilguri. Diolch, Eog. Thank you, salmon. And on the eagle flew over to Kilguri, where there sat a blackbird with tatty feathers and an ancient-looking beak, next to a tiny little pebble. Blackbird, dead indeed. Do you know if the owl of Cwm Cawlyd is old? I want to marry her, but I need to see if she's older than I am. Gyfaill, friend, I am old. I remember when this little pebble was so big you would need 300 oxen to move it. Now it is the same size as a nut, and all that has happened is every night before I go to sleep, I wipe my beak across its surface. And every morning when I wake up, I tap it with my wing. I've been around all that time, and the owl of Cwm Cawlyd was old when I first met her. But I do have a friend who is older than I am. He is the toad of Cors Fachna. And so the eagle took off again, flying above the beautiful scenery of the island of Prydain. The wind ruffled his feathers and it felt good. He could see the autumn leaves underneath him, and he continued to fly until eventually he could see beneath him a great bog stretching out. And he landed. And after some looking around, he finally found the toad of Cors Fachna. sitting among the rushes, with a beautiful gleam in his golden eyes. Toad, do you know if the owl of Cwm Cawlyd is old? I need to see if she's older than I am. The toad smiled to himself and settled back into the rushes, and he said, Friend, Gyfaill, I am so very old. You see this bog here among us? I remember when it was a great big hill, and you want to know what happened to it? I ate it all up. I only eat the dust of the earth. And I never eat as much as I want each day in case I use it all up. But you see that I did. I ate down a hill over thousands of years. And the owl of Cwm Cawlyd was so very old when I first met her. And I was young at the time. I remember the way her cry used to scare me. Diolch, Gyfaill, thank you, friend. I finally know that she is much, much older than I am. And the eagle, he took off again until he came to Cwm Cawlyd. And there in the hills he found the owl's nest. She had a beautiful, wise look in her eyes, and her feathers and wings were just as tattered and windswept as his. And once he mustered the courage, she looked expectantly, he said, Awnei di fy mhriodi. Owl, will you marry me? She was taken aback. She didn't expect this at all, but after a moment's consideration, she decided it would be nice to have somebody to hold and someone to share stories with. And so she agreed. They were married. It was a huge celebration, but not too loud. And they invited their friends, the stag, the salmon, the blackbird, and the toad. But nobody danced. They're all too old for that. Instead, they sat there quietly, keeping each other's company and sharing their stories. Thank you.
That is so good. Like, you
That was
described
amazing.
so much.
It was
That was
nice.
lovely, Fionn. Thank you very much.
Thank
Right.
you.
That was brilliant. Thank you for being here. We'll go to Fatma
loved
now.
it.
You
It
have
was
to
wonderful.
unmute yourself, mate.
Thank you.
Okay, that's right.
Rather than doing one long poem, I'm going to do a couple of short ones. And the first one's called Silence's Words. Sometimes we need to stop. Stop and listen. Listen to the silence, hear it breathe, understand its whisper, feel the words vibrate in our ears. Let it speak the unfiltered truth in a hushed voice that only some can hear. Those few who choose to listen. And with time, the silent chants louder. It speaks its language through choruses of pain. It fills the space between friendship with lyrics of unspoken words, because silence is braver than us. Its heels cuts that are more than just skin deep. And still it gets louder and louder, shattering our ego into millions of pieces, deafens us with answers fearlessly. It does what we could not, because silence is not scared. Silence plays a million notes. It speaks 1,000 words and answers 100 questions. It whispers and sounds. But even silence cannot overpower our ignorance. And those who are blinded by the disregard will never be able to stop and listen and truly hear the song that the silence sings.
Whoa.
The second poem I'm going to do is one about poetry, and I'm going to put it to music. Sometimes our words are just too powerful. Our apologies are too painful, and our feelings are too tearful. Sometimes our minds has listened to our thoughts for too long. wanting to hear something other than the broken echoes of lost hope. And so it reaches for words that are molded into a symphony of notes, watching the ink bleed onto the page, words that are stained crimson from the anger in their flame, a flame that's called poetry. Poetry speaks when the words can't escape the cage of our muted lips. It's whispers and it's choirs, pains, hidden, yet beautiful voice. It sings to the fragile song of pain and hope, because poetry isn't just a crowd of words and lines. Poetry is a desperation, a desire, a determination. It's a purpose, a passion, a picture-perfect creation. Poetry is musical and magical. It sings and it shouts, and it's meaningful and melodious, and it defies all doubt. Poetry dances on the shards of false stereotypes. It ignites an amber spark in the center of our eyes. Most of all, poetry is a delicate flood of words that doesn't lose hope. It's the way we can make sense of the thoughts in the deepest parts of our mind. Through the darkest shadows, poetry is a light, because poetry is more than a crowd of words and lines. It's for the times that we realize that sometimes our words really are too powerful to be said, but there are never any words that are too powerful to be written.
Oh.
Thank you.
I'd just like to say both of you were absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much.
That was
It was wonderful.
That was fantastic. I love that. Now, occasionally, I'm just blown away by the whole night, actually. So I'm lost for words, and that rarely happens. But right now, we occasionally get someone, when you do a story round, someone pops up and you don't know they're going to tell a story. Amy, do you want to tell a story? No, that's okay. So you're enjoying listening. That's perfect. Perfect. And Louis, are you enjoying yourself? Our regular listeners for a Friday night.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Yeah, I am.
Thank you, Louis. Now, Paul, I believe you've got someone very special to introduce to us. This is the final telling of the night, which, you know, it's one of those nights where you'd wish we were around a fire and we could just go round and round and round telling story after story after story, but as we can't.
But we can do this.
Can you introduce the last one?
John, sorry, Paul, before you get started. We can do this again, John. We will do this.
We will. Yeah. I thank you for reminding me, Mike.
Yeah.
That was a very subtle way of just saying, yeah, John, mention what we planned. Yeah, what we're doing in conjunction again with get a word in Edgeways, we're doing a world story round every other Sunday, and the alternative that'll be an open story round. And
yes, yes, John, we can be. We're not talking about that. I'm talking about doing another one of these for the young voices.
I am. I'm getting there. It takes me some years. It's my age, you know. But what we'll do on one of those Sunday nights is we'll make, on the alternate Sundays we're doing special themed world story round. And I think we're going to do another one dedicated to, on a Sunday night, dedicated to young tellers, because actually this is one of the best nights we've had on the, 4 months of the cafe. And it's been, Mike, what you'd go for that, right? So I'm going to shut up. We're going to do this again, and I'm going to let Paul introduce the last act.
Have you finished now? What a wonderful, stunning evening. I mean, I'm sitting here listening to these young people, and I know Mike talks about the evolution of storytelling. And I know I talk about, and there's other people talk about the future of storytelling. Well, it's been here this evening. Wonderful, amazing, breathtaking. And with that in mind, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce you to a young man called Jacob from Wales, another winner of the Welsh Storyteller of the Year, another person of which the future of storytelling is with him. So without any more ado, he's going to tell us a story from Africa.
Sorry, before Jacob speaks, could I just, excuse me, Paul, but could I just correct you? Actually, Jacob is Young Storyteller of the Year.
I said that.
Young Storyteller of Wales.
Yes.
But you're Young Storyteller of the Year, aren't you, Jacob? For the whole of the UK?
I think I am as of the last time it happened, because it's not happened for a while, has it, unfortunately?
No, I think he's still holding that title as well as the Wales title.
2 titles.
He's got broad shoulders, he can carry them both.
I'm sure he has. Thank you, Fiona. All right, well, Jacob, give us your wonderful story.
I shall do my best, especially now I have something to live up to. Thank you. Well, once the world was lush and green and beautiful. And in this world so long ago, there lived a family. The family had one hunter for a father, 5 children of varying ages, and of course, the mother. Now, it was getting to winter and the days were getting short and it was getting cold, and the hunter realized that they were going to be slightly low on food. And so he went out into the forest and began to search for just one final deer, one final fox, just something that he could take home. And he searched and he hunted and he searched and he hunted, but he found nothing. And even by the end of the winter, he hadn't returned. Now, time went, and it went on and on and on, and gradually the family forgot about the hunter. And even their smallest baby began to forget what his father looked like. But about 2 years later, the baby, who was now a toddler, thought. And he went up to his mother and he pulled on her sleeve and said, "Mum, where's my daddy?" And the mother said, "Well, oh, I'm not sure, don't worry about it." And she carried on what she was doing. And so the next day he went up to her and pulled on the sleeve and again and said, "Where's my daddy?" And she said, "Oh," and she began to remember, but it still didn't quite spark in her mind. Until the next day when he pulled on her sleeve one last time and said, "Where's my daddy?" And she said, "Well, and finally she remembered. And so she said to her other 4 sons, for this son was just a toddler, he was far too young to go out and look. "You must go and look for your father. We haven't seen him so long. Maybe he's begun living in the forest. Maybe he's just been hunting for that long. There are stranger things that have happened, but all 4 of you must go, and I will look after the toddler as you go." And so they went, and they walked and they walked and they walked deep, deep into the forest until eventually they found a pile of bones. Their father, the hunter. They recognized the bow. But the eldest brother said, "Isn't it lucky that I can put together the bones again, and then we can at least have something to take home to mother?" And so he picked up some sticks and broke them into small pieces and began to stick them together to make the shape of a man. And as he did so, as he lifted the sticks, so too did the bones move, and they fixed together until they had a complete skeleton of their father. Then the next youngest brother down, who wants to prove himself now, said, "Isn't it convenient, isn't it useful that I can put muscle back on the bone, make it so that we have something more complete to take to mother, something better to remember him by?" And so the second eldest brother took mud from the ground and put it around the stick figure and made it shaped like their father. And so too, as he did so, muscle knotted its way back onto the bones until there was a body there, more complete now, But as they looked, they saw something was missing. And the middle brother, the third brother, the brother who, of course, being a middle child, felt he had a lot to prove, said, well, isn't it convenient, isn't it useful, isn't it fantastic that I can put skin back on the body? That way we'll have the whole body for Mother, and we'll be able to have a proper funeral. And so he picked up leaves from the ground and he put them over the doll, the mud doll. And as he did so, skin began to form again on their father's body. Now, so far, the second youngest brother, the fourth brother, the youngest who was with them, had sat quietly. But finally he spoke up and he said, well, isn't it lucky? We have this full body and I know how to breathe life back into it. And so he breathed into his hands and gripped them together and pressed it onto the doll that they'd made. And the father's eyes flickered open and he began looking around. He looked over his four sons. Then he began walking straight past them towards the house. And he walked and he walked and he walked. And the sons walked and walked and walked behind him. And then eventually he got to the house. And the sons followed closely behind. And all the father did was sat down and he began whittling. He took out his hunting knife, took a piece of wood, he began to carve. And of course, they want to know who would get what he had made. The mother said, well, I should get it. After all, I sent all of you to go and fetch him. But the eldest brother said, well, I should get it. I'm the one who started this all. I put the bones back together. The next youngest brother said, well, I should get it, for I was the one who brought muscle back onto the body. And so it was. And as they argued, as they bickered, the father simply carved until he had a beautifully carved wooden cow. And he called over to his youngest brother, the one that had not gone, the toddler. And he placed him on his lap. He gave him the cow. And the others were outraged. They said, why are you giving it to him? He's done nothing. He didn't help at all. I said, no. He remembered me. And while someone remembers you, you're never truly dead. Thank you. That's my story.
Oh, fantastic.
Thank you, Jacob. Wonderful.
Such a brilliant night. Now, all you tellers really need, if you haven't been looking at the chat, the compliments have been rolling in. Everyone, you know, and the way you've supported each other, it's an example to all the adults actually. And I kind of had an idea. Michael support me on this. It's my World Storytelling Cafe is his gaff, so to speak. We could do a private that was just for young people. So it wasn't open to the public. We could host at the World Storytelling Cafe a weekly circle, young tellers circle. Mike, unmute yourself.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
No, Mike Wood.
Oh, Mike Wood.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, so it becomes it's a circle. They'd have their own password and get in. So it's
absolutely. We'd be honoured to do that. I think.
Now, if anyone's interested, if they could email the World Storytelling Cafe, worldstorytellingcafe@gmail.com, we can set that up, and the website we can host that. That's just a thought. If you might want it, might want it to sort of permeate through for a while, but we can have young storytellers meeting each other without us.
Okay.
And from that, of course, they can feed into these great nights here. But for the moment, Christine, Hamdi, Laura, Fatma, Fia, Jacob, amazing. Oh, it's Fionn, sorry. Fionn. Yeah, I know. I do it all the time. Just but one more huge round of applause. It's just been a brilliant and inspiring